My name is Extravaganta Grotesque, and I'm here today to talk about demons. The Exorcist is a horror film that came out in 1973, directed by William Friedkin. William Blatty wrote the screenplay as well as producing it because the film is based on the book he wrote under the same title that came out in 1972. This copy I've got right here, my grandma bought it in 1974. When the film came out, it shocked the world. It was well received by critics as the scariest film they've seen in years, yet it created a lot of controversy as it had so many scenes that nobody had seen on screen before, especially when it came to the ones involving a child, actress Linda Blair. Rumors say that some cinemas had ambulances waiting outside just in case the film was too much for the viewers. At this point, I'm pretty sure you all know who Captain Howdy and Regan are. But how many of you know who Roland Doe is? Well, both movie and book are based on his real story. In 1949, William Blatty read an article at the Washington Post about a 14-year-old boy who had been possessed by the devil and had an exorcism performed in order to free him from evil. Roland Doe, who was later confirmed to be 13 at the time, was the name that the Jesuit priests gave the boy in order to protect his identity. Though there's some speculation saying that his real name was Ronald Hunkeler. During the 1940s, Roland lived with his family in Cottage City, Maryland. He was an only child, so he was used to spend quite a lot of time around adults. He had a special bonding with his Aunt Harriet, and he would spend as much time as he could every time she came down for a visit from St. Louis. Aunt Harriet was a spiritualist, and she taught him a lot of things about death, the afterlife, and the connection between the human and the spiritual world. That led her to teach him how to use a Ouija board. Sadly, Aunt Harriet passed away, and that had a huge impact on Roland. Shortly after she died, around early January 1949, Roland started experiencing weird things happening around him. It is believed that, filled with grief, he went to the Ouija board to try to get in touch with his dead aunt, and that is when the possession began. Roland started to hear scratches and footsteps on the floor, water dripping through the walls, and he heard muffled voices talking to him, as well as seeing objects moving around on their own. One of his classmates was with Roland at his house. Roland was sitting on a chair, and he said that the chair started shaking just before throwing him across the room. That was the first time that someone outside of the family saw the strange events happening. He also changed completely. He started screaming randomly. He started acting violent towards people and cursing them. And because objects kept shaking around him at any given time, teachers started to see him as a troublemaker boy for moving his desk while in class, so he had to be removed from school. His family was very worried, and the turning point was when one night Roland's mom walked into his room and saw his mattress shaking with him on top. At first, they took the most logical path. They went to talk to several doctors and psychiatrists looking for some physical or mental illness. They performed a lot of different tests on Roland, but all the evaluations came back as normal. Because that path was leading them nowhere, they went to talk to their local Lutheran pastor, as they were Lutheran Protestants, because the only other possible explanation for Roland's condition was that he was possessed by his aunt Harriet. The pastor agreed to have him under his surveillance for one night, and after that, he suggested the family to get in touch with the Catholic Church. In late February 1949, Roland was visited by Father Hughes. The church requires to rule out any kind of medical explanation before turning to fighting the devil. All the results came back negative, so Father Hughes started the exorcism at Georgetown University Hospital, which is a Jesuit institution. Roland had to be restrained to the bed. When Father Hughes asked him what the name of the demon was, he replied,
Eo legionibus, which in Latin translates to I am legions.
On the third day of the exorcism, Roland managed to break free of his restraints, and with a piece of metal from the mattress, he cut Father Hughes' arm open. The priest was completely sure that the boy had been taken over by evil, and he stopped the ritual because he thought there was nothing else he could do. Roland was sent back home from the hospital, and a few days later his family noticed that some of the scratches that he had on his skin formed the word Louis. They took that as a sign that maybe they should take the boy to St. Louis, Missouri. They had relatives living over there, including Aunt Harriet, until she passed away. So around early March 1949, they moved in with the relatives in hopes that it would help Roland getting better. Once again, they turned to the Catholic Church. Father Bishop and Father Bowdern agreed to visit the boy. They went to his house several times, and they ended up experiencing for themselves all the evil events that the family had described. Furniture shaking, objects flying around, the boy speaking in tongues with a guttural voice, and a huge aversion towards anything related to religion. With all the medical reports stating that there was nothing wrong with the boy, and what the priests had witnessed at the house, they agreed that he was indeed possessed. Father Bowdern turned to the Archbishop, asking for permission to perform another exorcism. He asked a third priest, Father Halloran, to help performing the rite. 6 more priests, Alexian brothers, and some members of his family would attend some of the sessions in order to help with their prayers. Without the 360-degree head turning, the levitation with green vomit, or the upside-down staircase walk, Roland would get into this sort of like trance in which he changed completely. He became very violent with the strength of a grown-up man. Remember that he was only a 13-year-old boy. He cursed and spat at them and offered sexual favors to the priests. All these always happened during the night, while when it was daytime, Roland seemed to be pretty normal, with no recollection whatsoever of the night horrors. During one session, the priest saw how an X appeared scratched on the boy's body. In Roman numbers, the X is number 10. So they came to the conclusion that he was possessed by 10 demons. After several weeks, Roland's demons kept getting stronger, and the priest decided to take him to the Alexian Brothers Hospital to keep performing the exorcism in a more secure environment. He was kept in solitary confinement in a room on the 5th floor. Father Bowdern baptized Roland and gave him Holy Communion in an attempt to get him closer to God. He put up quite a struggle. His bed kept shaking all the time, and he even broke Father Halloran's nose. Finally, on the 18th of April, which that year was the Monday after Easter, the miracle happened. And Roland finally got to the ecstasy of his battle. He yelled,
Satan will always be with me.
and then he replied to himself by saying,
Satan, I am Son Michael, and I command you to leave this ball now.
all the priests backed up St. Michael, and they started praying so that he would be stronger on his battle against Satan for Roland's soul. I feel like it's important to mention that in the book of Revelations, which is the last book of the Bible, St. Michael is the archangel that leads or will lead God's army against Satan during the apocalypse. Obviously, it is predicted that he will win. It's such an interesting passage, so I'm gonna read it, even though my Bible is in Spanish. El Apocalipsis de San Juan, capítulo 12, versículo 7. Entre tanto, se trabó una batalla grande en el cielo. Miguel y sus ángeles peleaban contra el dragón, y el dragón con sus ángeles lidiaba contra él. Pero estos fueron los más débiles, y después no quedó ya para ellos lugar ninguno en el cielo. Así fue abatido aquel dragón descomunal, aquella antigua serpiente, que se llama Diablo y también Satanás.
Yes, 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 yes. The book of Revelations talks a lot about me, but this is only one side of the story.
Seven minutes later, Roland came back from his trance and he looked at the priests and he said, "He's gone." He then told them that he remembers in some sort of like a dream how good was fighting against evil, and he saw St. Michael saving his soul. After that, he went on to live a rather normal life. Apparently, he moved to the East Coast with his family. Eventually, he married and had a son who he named Michael. He never had any other encounters with the devil. The room in which the exorcism took place at the Alexian Brothers Hospital was completely sealed after that and never used again. In 1978, the whole hospital facility was torn down, and while doing so, workers found a locked room that had official records of Roland being admitted into the hospital, as well as evidences placing the priests there at the same time. Because there's no written evidence of the first exorcism performed by Father Hugh, some people questioned whether it actually happened. Father Bowdern, on the other hand, did keep a diary with all the details about what happened to that boy. Due to church restrictions when it comes to talking about these things, he never really talked about the case, and it is believed that he eventually burned the diary. When he died in 1983, he took the whole truth to his grave. Father Halloran confirmed that indeed such diary existed. He even gave a copy to writer Thomas Allen, who included it on his book Possessed, published in 1993. It was a way of letting the world know the whole truth of what happened. When Father Halloran was publicly asked if he truly believed that the exorcism was real, he said,
I'm convinced that the situation and the things that he went through was all genuine. There wasn't any deception on his part.
For those of you who don't believe in the devil, there's always the explanation that back in the day, historically, mental illnesses have been wrongly labeled as demonic possessions, mainly because they just didn't have the knowledge or the resources to comprehend the human's mind. Maybe Roland's case was just that, and at the time, they didn't yet have the means in order to determine what illness he had. From my point of view, I do believe that nowadays films about demonic possession are used as a metaphor to represent the struggles that a person goes through when they have a mental illness, or even the doubts and difficulties and dilemmas that young people go through when they step into adulthood. The reality is that the figure of the exorcist still exists in the Vatican today. In Spain, the most famous exorcist is Father Fortea. Father Amorth was the chief exorcist of the Vatican up until his death in 2016, and he was very well known for publicly speaking about his work.
I do love they talk about me.
To create awareness that the devil still walks amongst us. Personally, I do want to believe. As the last fun fact, we all know that the film ended up becoming a huge success. However, apparently, production was hell. All the cast and crew members were convinced that the set was cursed. So they asked a priest to come in and bless it. That didn't stop the set of the House of the McNeils to mysteriously caught up in flames while filming, except for Regan's room, which I gotta say, it was refrigerated so the cameras would catch the breath of the actors. Maybe that's the reason why it didn't burn, maybe it's not. The thing is that every time the actors had to film inside of that room, they were literally filming while freezing. Finally, I just want to add that the 75 exorcist steps in where Father Karras dies in the film are a must-see location in Georgetown for horror movie fans. With this, I think I've given you already enough information about demons today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for being here with me so I don't feel alone. And let me know, do you believe in the devil? Did you believe in demonic possessions, or are you one of those skeptics who believe it's all down to medical explanations? Anyway, thanks again. Don't forget, you have to subscribe. Otherwise, now I'm not going to say anything about demons. I'm just going to say that if you subscribe, I'll be able to see you all next time.
Beware. I might see you all next time as well.
Vale, bueno, luego te veo, que estoy ahora mismo de niña de exorcista. De Niña el Exorcista. Chao.